is only one perfect solution, but there are clues that will try to trick our team.
Hello there everyone, my name is Crazy Caleb and welcome to Wire Sequence. This module is very similar to the vanilla mod of Wire Sequence, and the solving process of it is basically the exact same as Wire Sequence. So for those of you who don't know how that vanilla mod works, and you are watching this tutorial, play the vanilla game first. So that's the only tip that I can give to this. But the biggest difference between this is obviously the way that the module is presented here. And what we're going to have here is we have a wire sequence display inside of a wire sequence display. So we're going to be doing this module effectively 12 different times, or rather 16 times. It's going to be, we have to do 4 stages of 4 different panels of wire sequences. And the catch with this is that there's going to be a series of different rules that we have to follow per panel that we're looking at. And the way that I'm going to refer to this is I'm going to represent the 1 as the component panel, because that's what it's called in the actual manual itself. So we're going to be doing 4 component panels of 4 different wire sequence modules, effectively. But each of them are going to have a series of different rules. And the way that these rules are going to be represented here is if we look at the occurrences of the first wires for red, blue, and black, which is going to be the same from the vanilla module, is if we're going to take a look here, we've got first red occurrence, second red occurrence, and so on and so forth, all the way down to 9th for each of them. Excuse me. And what's going to happen then afterwards is after the 9th one, it's then going to go to first red occurrence. And effectively what these mean is the second part of the message, in this case, is going to be the count for that specific component panel, and the first part of the message is going to be the specific component panel itself. So in this first example, we're going to be focusing on the first group of these here, so all the way down to the first 9, effectively. That's going to be represented by the first component panel. Then, as you can see later on, when this number of 1 changes to a 2, we're then going to be solely focusing on the second portions of this, and then we have the thirds, and then we have the fourths, and then that's going to be the end of the module. So the way that this works is the exact same as wire sequence. It's just a bit longer for a very funny reason, in my opinion. So let's have a look. Let's see how this works. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each different wire recurrence from top to bottom. If you don't know how wire sequence works, we're going to look at each of them from top to bottom, in this case 1, 2, 3, as they're connected on the left side, and see if they're connected to something that can be cut to, if it's actually connected to it. Okay, so we have 1 of each color in this case. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the first black wire occurrence, and we're going to cut if it's connected to Charlie. In this case, it is not connected to Charlie, so therefore we're going to simply skip this. So then we're going to take a look at the first blue wire, which is going to be between alpha or bravo to cut it there. We do not have that, and we're going to cut the red wire if it's at alpha or bravo, which in this case it is. And now we're going to move down in this one right here, like that. Oh, and lucky us, we happen to get a case where there's no wires present, so therefore we can simply move on to the next stage. There is still the possibility of this happening. I just wasn't expecting it to happen. What? 3 times in a row? Okay, that's ridiculous. Okay, so now we're done with the first panel, and now we're going to be at the second component panel here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move immediately down to these conditions here. So therefore, we're going to be looking at the second first blue occurrence and the second first black occurrence. So therefore, the second first blue occurrence has to connect to a bravo. It does not. The second first black occurrence has to connect to a bravo or Charlie. We therefore can cut that one. That's good to go. Then therefore we have the second blue occurrence and the second black occurrence. The second blue occurrence has to connect to Charlie, and the second black occurrence has to connect to bravo Charlie. Those therefore are not going to be cut. Moving on to the next stage. So therefore this indicator in the middle here is representing this specific component panel's status, and this outer one, the bigger one, is representing the entire module's status, effectively. So we are only a quarter of the way through, so let's continue on. All right, so we've got 2 blue occurrences, and we have a first red occurrence. So therefore, The first blue needs to connect to alpha, which it does. The second blue needs to connect to alpha. And then the first red needs to connect to ABC, which effectively is just a way of saying it's a guaranteed cut. Okay. And then finally, we have the third black occurrence on this stage, and we have the fifth blue occurrence on this stage. The blue does connect to alpha. The black does not connect to Charlie, therefore on the next stage. Good to go. Okay. So next up, we're going to be now looking at the third, first, and second occurrence, because we're on the third stage, on the third component panel, and therefore this is going to be the new rules that we're going to look at. The first must connect to Bravo, it does not, and the second must connect to Bravo or Charlie, therefore it does. Let's crack on. Okay, the third first red occurrence needs to connect to Alpha, and then the third occurrence needs to connect to Charlie. Both of them need to connect to Charlie, they're both not connected to Charlie, so therefore moving on to the next stage. Then we have two black occurrences here and one red. That one red is not going to be cut. The first one needs to connect to Charlie, it does not. The second needs to connect to Alpha, it does. We can cut that one. And finally, for these for the third stage, we have two more blues. This one needs to connect to Alpha or Bravo, which it does, and this one needs to connect to Charlie, it does not. Moving on to the final stage. So for stage 4, here we go. So we've got blue twice and red once. The first one needs to connect to Charlie, it does. The second needs to connect to Charlie, it does not. And the first red needs to connect to Alpha, it does not. Then next up we have two more blues. It needs to connect to Alpha and then Charlie, it does not for either of those. Then needs to connect to Alpha, it does not for that one. And then Bravo, we can guarantee cut that one. Then the next one needs to connect to Alpha Charlie, which it does. And then the first black for this one needs to connect to Charlie, it does not. And therefore, when we press this one, the module will solve. Overall, fairly simple module. I'm only going to do one example because it's the exact same thing as wire sequence, but with just a couple special rules. But just remember that when you switch to a component panel, you're not going to be looking at the first rules anymore. You're then going to be looking at the second, and then whenever you switch to the next component panel, you're going to be looking at the third. There's no reason to look back at, for example, saying the second sixth or anything. It's nothing weird like that. It's just simply the component panel is the stage. You have a series of different rules for each stage, and then when you move on to the next component panel, you're then going to look at the second, and then the third, and then the fourth, and so on and so forth. There's going to be no reason that when you're on the third stage, for example, you're going to have to look back at the first or second stage rules. There's no reason for that whatsoever. So just hope that clears up any confusion. It overall is a very simple mod to do. It's a lot longer than the original wire sequence, obviously, but it's a mod that exists. So as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to stay crazy, stay cool, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.